Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us again. It's a wonderful Friday. This is Teal Gray for Teal Gray Worldwide and Para Mysteries. We have with us again a great group of authors and talents of many. There's too many to list. I'm going to go around and have them all introduce themselves to you. Some you met last week. You met Tui Snider and Mark Fults. We have Linda Rhinehart Neas, Claudia Hall Christian, and new with us this week we have Greg Stevens. And so today is all about protection, spiritual protection, how to cleanse your environment, your own aura field, how to do this with meditations. And everybody's going to share some of their favorite ways to do this and also just their thoughts about it. We are energetic beings, and so everything around us is also got an energy field that we're interacting with and that is interacting with us, whether we know it or not. We might not be able to see them, but they certainly are affecting our field and our homes. And so this is something that so many people, especially now, Claudia had people that have been asking her. Mark and I have spoken several times this week about people who have contacted us for help because, the planetary alignment is going crazy. Everything in their life's going crazy. And in some spaces, everything's fine. Sometimes when they go home, they feel this sort of heaviness and they fight for no reason with a spouse that if they leave the house, is everything great? Yes. And they come back and it's something there. So they're kind of putting two and two together and thinking, okay, maybe there is something to this energy cleansing, and they want to know more about that. So without further ado, let me take you around the clock here. Mark Fults, can you introduce yourself to everybody? Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go around clockwise.
All right. I am a psychic from Chattanooga, Tennessee, the Chattanooga Choo Choo. Actually, I was there today. I've written a book, Chattanooga Chills, and Chattanooga Chills Scream Louder, which is coming out pretty soon. I've done worked on two books with Teal. She did Shades of Angels and Spirited Tales, and I put some of my spooky stories in those, and some illustrations. I'm an illustrator and then a designer, mask maker. I do things just did The Lion King for a huge production of children not too long ago. I'm about to start a walking ghost tour in Chattanooga called Chattanooga Chills Ghost Tours. And so I'm an all-around weirdo. I'm a Wiccan witch / spiritualist, which is pretty much on the edge of it's pretty much here. Wicca is kind of like Christian witchcraft. It's not, it's just a thing of being into metaphysics. And Wicca and witches are basically energy technicians. It's a practice. And that's why, we have specific things we do to protect ourselves using our energy, learning how to take different elements of energy to put them together to get a result. And so that's me, I guess.
Wonderful. Greg Stevens, introduce yourself to the world.
I'm Greg Stevens. I'm a 26-year Army vet, retired first sergeant, and a lifelong ghost chaser. So I've done that ever since I was a little kid. And even in Iraq, Kosovo, Africa, and everywhere else I've been, I always seem to encounter one form of a spiritual situation or another, good or bad. And I run a group called Research Investigation of the Paranormal, otherwise known as RIP, RIP. And I specialize in historical stuff, preservation of historical districts and stuff like that. And we try to keep those up and going because that's where history lives, and the spirits that ran it when it first started and throughout its time in history. My deal, I'm pretty good at contacting the other side, or the other side contacting me, but it's on the dark side is where my strong point is at. My other team members can hit the good side of things, but when it's the dark entities or dark side of things, they know who I am, they know what's in my heart, and they know what I can do. And so they seem to like to come at me. And that's where I come with my specialization. And with what we're talking about with cleansing and clearing and stuff like that. So I got some things but that's me.
Fantastic. And Linda, tell us who you are.
Hi, I just had to turn the mic back on. I'm Linda Rhinehart Neas. I'm an interfaith minister and a non-professional ghost hunter, I guess. I don't hunt them, they hunt me. They find me. They found me since I was a child. And I'm a writer and a teacher, and I've done some work with Teal and Tui and Mark, and this is something I love, and I'm really excited to be part of this again.
Wonderful. And Miss Claudia, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm in such esteemed company that it's a little embarrassing. I write fiction. I'm a keen observer, and so I've had a lot of experiences in my life with a wide range of profound things, and I'm somebody that people like to talk to, and so people always tell me their stories about their profound things. So I'm not really a researcher, and I'm not really I'm just kind of a keen observer and someone that people tell stories to, and then I write. You know, my tagline is great stories about good people in difficult situations. So that's what I do. And I have to use, so we're talking about clearing and cleansing. I have to use that to create the space, if only in my own mind, to let the stories unfold in the way that they unfold without being polluted by what's either going on with me or what's going on in the world. And so that's what I use it for. We've also done space clearings in all of our offices and houses and things like that. Just good thing to do.
Fantastic. And Tui Snider, who are you?
Well, how about me? Well, all right. I am Tui Snider. Here's my business card. It's kind of an odd name, Tui, T-U-I, Snider. And I am a Texas-based travel writer. I take a lot of photos, and I'm a musician. And I started writing books in 2014, and I just have not been able to stop. The first one's a travel guide to quirky places. I like quirky things. The second one is a travel guide to haunted places. That was a lot of fun, and I did some investigations with Greg Stevens for research and with Teal for this. Yeah, and I was really impressed with how professional he is, because some of the research, teams that I participated with, I've been to slumber parties when I was 12 that were more, mature than they were. They'd be running around, drinking and smoking. I'm like, really? So Greg is the real deal. His military experience shines through because he's very organized, and I love it. I mean, I just stay out of the way while he sets up, and then I know I'm in for an awesome time whenever I go with him on an investigation. I also am a musician. Last year I released an album. It's dream pop. That's what people tell me. I did not come up with that title. It's just that when I think I'm being angsty and I write a song, it comes out like a marshmallow. So there you go. Everyone's like, really? That doesn't dreamy. That doesn't sound angsty. Whatever. So I am currently, that's all I can say. I loved punk rock growing up, but then when I have a song come out, it's all like, people fall asleep listening to it. Okay, whatever. Now the book I'm really working hard on and I want to mention is this one. This is the cover. It's not the book, as you can see. It's going to be a lot thicker than that. It's called Understanding Cemetery Symbols. And the cover might change, but those are all photos I've taken in different historic cemeteries. It's a field guide for exploring historic cemeteries, which I think can be a great way to get outside and enjoy nature. In fact, America's parks, the first parks, before we had parks, we had garden cemeteries, and that's where people would go to have a nice day out in nature. So I'm writing madly, like 10 hours a day working on finishing that book up, and I want to let people know you can pre-order it for only $9.99. I don't have Ginsu knives to go with that, but it really is. It really is. It's going to go up to $19.99 once I get 100 pre-orders. So it's inching along, and I'm just offering it at a really good price right now because that helps me get a better boost when it comes out. Also, I want to mention that I want to show some of the other books that some of us participated with Teal, and we'll be talking about these today. Shades of Angels with a gorgeous cover by Mark Elliott Fults, and has a bunch of my photos in it as well. If you go through his illustrations, some of my photos of different places. So yes, that's what I do. I write and I take photos and I hang out with fun people like you guys. I've been looking forward to this all day. If I haven't, so there you go. Oh, that was
wonderful. Well, the theme that runs through so many, of my works is the spiritual connection, because I believe everything is connected. I think everybody is connected. I think that every person, entity, even inanimate objects, rocks, trees, anything, they all have an essence. They all have an energy. And all of that together is part of us. We're all, we appear solid, but we're not. We're a mass amount of particles and energy that make up this sort of, as one person said, this meat suit that we wear. And inside is this energetic spiritual being, and that interacts energetically with everything. So even if you haven't, the same belief systems that I do, you're bound to have had interactions and times when you just couldn't quite figure out how do I instantly meet somebody and our energy just either connects or clashes. That's it. That's energy. That's just your energy. How is it that, dogs or children love somebody? And also, we talked last week about how birds sometimes are, after somebody. Why? What are they? They don't know that person. They're reading their energy. There's something about them, So it's very fascinating, and you can go into so many different levels of that. But today, we're just going to sort of do a shorthand assumption that you realize there are these spiritual energetic interactions that happen. People want clearings of their houses because something doesn't feel right, or they know there's something in their home. They feel like there's a spirit, a ghost, there's something there. Generally, they don't feel like they're friendly. Some people, Linda has some friendly ghosts that she kind of waves at as they walk past, and she's happy with that. I have a mixed bag of tricks, but so the thing is that I want everybody to, let's open this discussion up, and you guys just take turns. I'm not going to really mediate this part of it, but the first part I'd like to talk about is, let's say your house is haunted, or let's say it's just some kind of a negative vibe that's either making you feel ill, or maybe you're more aggressive than normal, and you want to clear the space. That can be your home, that can be your work. There's people I know who with cars so that they have safer travel before trip or just daily. It really can be anything that you need, whatever you feel you need, and your own personal energy can be cleared. So let me open this up to all of you, and just take turns and tell me what you think about it. Do you think it's crazy, or do you believe in it? And do you have an idea of how somebody might help to cleanse? Let's say they already have this issue. So we're going to start with the cleansing, and then the next topic will be how to protect once you're cleansed, and so you don't have this happen again. So off you go, guys.
I'll start. Right. I never thought. Oh,
I was like, no one's jumping in. I'll jump in.
Well, I never thought that much about it until I had a friend who was the #1 realtor in Denver, and really sold a lot of houses, sold houses that nobody could sell. And her trick always was to get people in to clear the energy, to do space clearings and clearings. She had somebody on call who took care of bad ghosts. And so to me, it was just not something that was even on my radar until I met this person who really was the key to her success. And so I think that it's not something that we do if we change residences or get new offices and do randomly, because I think that it just is a way to engender success. So that's all I had to say. Go ahead, Tui.
Oh, I was just going to say that, yeah, it was something that I was resistant to for some reason. And I actually talk about this, the time, what really forced me, it all came to a head, because I think protecting yourself from something invisible when you're so busy already, it is something very easily ignored. And I certainly ignored it until it came to a head. And I go into it a bit in Shades of Angels, actually. Back when I had my coffee house in my 20s, I was having a really rough week, and I had a kind of a bad, unhappy things happening in my marriage, and my daughter was a teenager or approaching that. And so there was a lot of, and then plus I was a small business owner. As you know, you work so darn hard. I mean, my day off consisted of me going to my coffee house, creeping in there, sneaking in, hoping no one would see me because I didn't want to be bothered, cleaning it. And then I would finally sit down and make myself a cup of coffee and read a book for an hour. That was my big treat, and enjoy the coffee house, because the rest of the time as a business owner, I was working hard. Well, I had a super busy, stressful week, and I had this feeling of dread coming on me all week long, and I was kind of ignoring it, because what do you do with a feeling of dread? I had other things that really had to be dealt with, taxes and a school conference with teacher conference and stuff like that going down. So I was kind of ignoring it. But then my customers started to say something to me, which is interesting. When you have a coffee house, you're in touch. What's one thing I miss about it is you're really in touch with your community's vibe. And they were all starting to say to me, pull me aside and say, hey, you know what, Tui, over in that corner, I'm getting a bad feeling. They were saying it like the Native American person would say it to me in one way, and the Christian person scared me. She's like, I feel something, I don't know, like evil in that corner. I'm like, whoa. But they all had their own belief system. More new age friends are like, there's kind of a bad vibe in that corner. I was like, oh, I don't have time to deal with a bad vibe, right? I've got other things. But then I noticed that I changed the light bulb over in the lamp over there, because people who were not woo-woo at all were saying it's dark over there. And I noticed it was dark. And I had the same exact lighting situation I'd always had. And it wasn't like there was a, cloudier day. This was the Northwest. It was always cloudy. So I couldn't figure that out. I'm like, that's really weird. Oh, well. So it finally got to that day where I had my day off. I go into my coffee house, and instantly I'm sweeping, and I couldn't even get myself to sweep in that corner. And I was in such denial. I told myself, well, I don't see any gum on the floor over there. It's not really dirty. I just ignored it. But I was getting jumpier and jumpier. I don't know if you've ever done that, when I was in such denial that there was something to deal with. Finally, I get a phone call, and I would normally ignore the phone if it rang on my day off, but I was glad I answered, because it was my friend who is a psychic, and she worked for the fairy system, and she was kind of Celtic pagan style, but she was very intuitive. And she just goes, are you okay? I just felt that I needed to call you. And I was glad she did, because I'd also suddenly was starting to have an asthma attack as well. I was having a hard time breathing, and there wasn't like anything, allergens there that I was aware of. And I just had that, the feeling of something looking at you. I mean, it just kept getting worse and worse. And then, so I said, no. And she goes, I'm getting off work. I'm going to come over right now with my boyfriend. And I'm like, okay, great. So I hang up, and I go, and I just sit out in the, as soon as I sit out, I'm just waiting, like, get here soon. I hear some pots and pans like clattering in the kitchen, just a little like shaky, but we get earthquakes. I don't know. I was just like, what is that? I finally get the nerve up to look around the corner, and there's a pile of like 5 forks on the floor. I have no idea how they got there. I mean, I still can't figure out how that happened. I wish it was on, it didn't make sense, but I was just like, oh, I have forks on the floor, and I backed out of the room. I put the forks away, and I just sort of backed away. I was still telling myself that I wasn't scared, which was totally not true. So then Ariel and her boyfriend get there, and they were an interesting pair. She was very, Celtic pagan origin. He had been raised with really strict Christian like religion. I mean, and he was very clean cut, and yet he could like if you had a headache, he could put his hands on you, and you would practically, your hair would like, you would tingle and practically crackle. I've never felt that much, even from Reiki masters and people who do energy healing. I've never felt that much energy before, but whatever. That's getting off the subject. They came in. I'm like, thank God you're here. And they said, they both told me, yeah, we kind of noticed that this corner over here was being a problem this week, but we didn't want to overstep the boundaries of our friendship and say anything. And I'm like, well, what do I do? Oh, and I forgot to mention that in my tip jar that week, while this whole thing is escalating as the week's going along, a Native American lady had put a bundle of sage in my tip jar and just said, honey, I think you need this. And I'm like, what? I didn't even know what do you think? I mean, people put weird things in your tip jar. So you're just like, okay, have a good day, whatever. I don't know what this is for. So, but they immediately got to work and they were like, gosh, if only we had some sage. I'm like, oh, I do. So I pull it out of the cash register and like, oh, that's perfect. They light it up and they start, and it gets smoky, and they walk around, we're holding hands. I'm so scared by that point, walking around and just getting it all cloudy. And they both start talking, and Ryan starts saying sort of biblical style, in the name of Jesus, yada, yada, kind of biblical stuff. And then Ariel was saying more like, I call upon the four directions. They had their own ways of approaching it. And, and I guess I mentioned that because I don't think the verbiage matters so much as like Mark will talk about focus and intent. And I just kind of trailed around behind him, and they smoked up the whole place. And then partway through, all of a sudden I had this feeling, and I've since had this when I've cleansed other areas and I didn't notice it. I felt like, oh, so I feel like I'm standing up straighter all of a sudden. It's like, it's bad for my posture when I don't clear a space. I start to slump and I don't even notice I'm doing it. I suddenly was just like, oh, and they both said, oh, did you feel that? Yeah, I think we've turned a corner with this. And then they said, oh, well, this wasn't as bad as we thought. It's all clear. And I was like, great. And they're like, hey, Missy, no. You're going to have to do this every week. I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, it's like flossing your teeth or sweeping the floor. You can't just say you're done. Oh, so that was annoying because I just wanted to be in denial about it. And I would like to say that, oh yeah, I kept up and did it every week. I did for the duration of my coffee house. I started doing it at home, and I had to be secretive about it because my husband it's another story. And I have since done it, but every time I quit doing it, something will happen to remind me and zing me. And it's like, oh, okay, all right, I'm getting back to, I'm going to floss, I'm going to smudge, I'm going to be good. So that's kind of, and so this is kind of what I use. Actually, it's an abalone shell. It was a Native American person gave this to me, really nice lady. And this is what's left of my little smudge stick right now. I need to get another one. But another issue I had was I felt, I'm a white gal and I didn't want to be appropriating someone else's culture. So I felt odd at first. And I mentioned this to them, and I even mentioned it to my Native American friends, and they were like, it's just a tool, honey, get over it. It's not, you're not going around saying I'm an Indian now, or I'm, a pagan princess. You are just saying, you're just using a tool. I'm sharing it with you. I'm sharing this knowledge with you. So that made me feel a lot better, because sometimes people will kind of come at you with that, like, how dare you use, you're culturally appropriate, and like, whatever. And then I wanted to mention too, that when I travel, because you cannot always, obviously, if you're in a hotel room, there's like no smoking, or you're on a cruise ship, you can't light up something and, set off alarms. So I have two different things. This is some Reiki, this is crystal charged, what is it, lavender and sage. I like the way it smells, smudge spray. And then I always feel like I'm selling stuff on here. I'm on the home shopping channel. And this is called Ghoul Be Gone. You got to love it. And I was suspicious of this Ghoul Be Gone stuff, but I was at History, Haunts, and Legends, and the lady who used it, she was sensitive and could kind of see what was going on with people. And a friend of ours, Teal, knows this person too, but I won't mention her name because she doesn't know that I'm going to be talking about her. And she has eyes that are kind of like my color, but they were looking really gray, like really dark gray. And so the woman said, okay, I'm just going to spray this around. She said, you've got a lot going on, and especially right around your throat chakra. So she sprayed some of this Ghoul Be Gone around her, and we're all just watching. I'm like, whatever. And I'm like, all of a sudden I was like, holy moly, her eyes changed color from this dark gray to this bright, Wonder Woman blue, that we were all like, where did that come from? So anyway, that's little things like that have been.
And do you know what's in the Ghoul Be Gone?
I don't remember now. I think
that's a great title, though.
Yes, it is.
It is. I can't remember the name of the woman who gave it to me. She was so great, but after she fluffed me up and sprayed me with this, I was all like perky and peppy, and I came back, and my husband, who does not believe in anything, he's like, wow, did you just have some coffee? You're really perkier than normal. I'm like, no, I had some Ghoul Be Gone. And then he's like, oh, God. Like, he's not convinced, but whatever. I smudge the house sometimes when he's at work, and then he'll come home and be like, oh, it feels great in here, so. There's my big long spiel.
Well, I'm going to jump in because we're in the middle of a thunderstorm and I'm afraid I'm going to lose my connection. The lightning gods are striking all around me here. One of the things that, well, actually, Tui just used all of my techniques pretty much, because I sage and I also spray. Clary sage oil and lavender oil are usually the ones that I use most often, because they seem to have the best qualities. But also I use quartz rocks, because they will absorb the negative energy in an area, and then you can take them and you soak them in salt water or you put them in sunshine and it releases the negative energy. So being able to use that as a tool also helps in many situations. But one of the things that I do most often for myself, we sage the house, which is probably the reason why we have the friendly ghosts instead of the spooky ones. Because I think we probably we could have spooky ones, given the history of the area. But I also do the spray, and I take that with me like you do, Tui, to places when, I go to other places. My daughter lived in a house that her nursery, she ended up not using because the baby would cry constantly. Every time she put the baby into the nursery, she would cry. And when she got old enough to talk, she was able to tell her mother that there was a man that had a scary face that kept on coming over to her bed and looking at her. Yeah. And after that, that was it. They were so I came with my spray, because they didn't do they didn't do sage, they didn't do smoke. They felt that was too crazy, and so I brought my little magic spray and I sprayed all over the place and said prayers. But one of the things that I do that and I teach my children to do it, I teach other people to do it, is to create a energy bubble around you. And that's done through a guided meditation where we talk about envisioning this energy, this beautiful white light coming towards you and, enveloping you, going all around you. And it's a bubble. And, once it's around you, you can change the bubble's color if you want it. You don't like white, you want purple, fine. It can be whatever color you want, as long as it makes you feel good. And then you ask the universe to not let any negative energy in, only love. And it protects it. It has always protected me, and other people who have done this meditation have also feel like they've been protected by doing this. So that's just another little tip to helping to cleanse places. But I think that the most effective way for me to cleanse a place is to use smoke and ask for the 4 directions to the ancestors and the spirits of the 4 directions to come in and protect an area. And I've done it for houses and I've done it for people. I've even sprayed hospital rooms, which are notoriously bad. I don't know. Linda, can you have had that kind of experience? Yeah. But it's not good.
Linda, can you tell us a little bit more about your spray? Do you put it in water?
Yes.
Do you put like 4 drops of this and 5 drops of that, or is it just kind of random, or how does it work?
Well, it depends on the size of the bottle.
Sure.
You want to put enough in that the essence is being shared. Mm-hmm. You don't need a lot. So if you have like a one of those little, like the bottles that Tui had, you mm-hmm. can put in a couple of drops of clary sage and a couple of drops of lavender. If you're using one of the big sprayers like you mist flowers with or something, I'd put in maybe 4 or 5. You want to smell it. If you can't smell it, you don't. You need more oil. But it's not. You don't have to use a lot of it. to get the scent, and then you mist all around. I mean, smoke and water have been used since the beginning of time to cleanse energy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know of how many
Well.
different places that this happens, but it's
Yeah.
it's all over the place. The shamans use smoke and water. They also use drums.
I was just going to say, I have a Native American drum that my friend who
Yeah.
gave me for a wedding gift. And if no one's home, I run around the house banging that. And then sometimes I put on YouTube, I'll crank, I like Tibetan monks, like
Mhm.
going, "Ow, ow." I love that. I'll just crank that. And it just makes it feels like it's sparkling in here.
Yep.
The equivalent of being like OCD on the energetic level. Like, it's leaving in here now. I mean, I've actually put the singing bowls. I swear they can make you feel high. I've been like, my friend and I
Yep.
were using one. I'm like, whoa, did you? I mean, it can feel really good.
Yeah.
It's
So
very
sound is very healing.
Lower negative vibrations don't like loud noises, and they don't like certain frequencies. So those drumming and the singing bowls and different tuning forks, things like that, are used to elevate the vibration, i.e. the sound tone. And so it lifts everything up, and the lower things fall away, they go away.
Right.
Yeah.
I will say
and
that
the ringing of bells also.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I will say that our dog Cassie is a really big voice. She goes down and barks at everything, and it's like the air just kind of jumps around her. We call her an angel of the loud. She's very
Oh, I
loud.
like that.
Yeah.
That's sweet.
And so dogs barking must do it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Greg, do you have
Oh.
anything that you particularly like to use as far as clearing a space? You mentioned that your specialty, which I know, is you do a lot of dark energy clearing. What do you use as far as technique?
Who are you asking?
Greg?
Hello.
Oh, okay. I didn't hear. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm a real deep faith person, so my spirituality comes from a hard Christian faith. So I do use the white sage and my spray is the holy water. I use the holy water as well, especially in the dark entities places like that one place in Burleson I go to quite often that has a portal, and I can't close the portal, but I can calm the portal, and I can keep that portal calmed down for anywhere from a month to 6 months. But it also depends on the homeowners, because homeowners that have places like that, you have to kind of counsel spirituality with them as well, because if they keep coming up with the negatives, it's just going to rise up again. And that's why I'm going back, because this lady, she is sweet, she believes, but she is just coming out, and it's going to take a whole more than what I'm able to do. But any other place, the white stage or whatever, and I go through and I say a lot of biblical and verses and stuff like that, but it's all through conviction. And when other people come in and do that, and they're not doing it with the conviction, they're not just saying words and spreading smoke around. You got a certain circular motion, and you got to hit the open house, even the cupboards, the windowsill, everything, and you got to go. And what I try to do is I have the homeowners or whoever that's having the issue go with me, and I have them, after I'm done, I try to get them to do it too, because they're the ones that's having the issue, not me. So I can calm it, but they got to help get rid of it, But I like what she's saying about the crystals. I've read up a lot about the crystals, and I've been meaning to try that. I might go back to that one house and try that a little bit and see what I can do with that. But, when you got an open portal that you didn't open, that you can't close, you got some issues. And but what I use the white sage and holy water, a lot of Bible verses, so whatever it takes to get through, and spiritual counseling, and just one-on-one counseling, trying to what they have. Because if they have and understand what's going on, they're going to keep coming back over.
Well, I know we're having some storms in different parts of the area, so you break up a little bit, but anybody that didn't catch exactly, he, comes from a strong faith-based background, and he, uses the Word of God as well as holy water to bless a space and to cleanse it. And so, that a couple of parts I think broke up. So just wanted you to know that. And Mark, let's turn to you for.
Okay. I do. Right now, I haven't done a lot of ghost hunting lately, but I'm getting ready to start back up. But of course, I was with some groups who were, monthly. We were going into places, and especially, if you get situations where there are children involved and there's something going on, and I've known groups who'll go in and go, yeah, you got a problem, I'm the ghost monitor, and but they don't do anything to it, or they stir it up, and then or have to know that there are children in a scary situation, something that would scare an adult, and they just walk off from that, which I've never done. I've never left somebody hanging. And the way that I have to approach things is I have different procedures you can go in and cleanse a place, but you need to make a boundary when you do that, so that you're making a energy field, and you're going to fill it with a different kind of energy, push the lower negative energy out of that boundary, so you will keep it out of the house. It may not, you may not be able to, you can't destroy energy. Energy only transforms. So you change the energy locks of the energy in the space. And when you do that, then you have a boundary that is a higher frequency than the lower energy, and they can't access the space the way that they were before. So you basically change the locks, you push them out, change the locks, and they'll go somewhere else, or they'll fade out, or they'll be reabsorbed into the universal brain. But what I do, when people talk about doing the cleansings, people talk about the white light that you can visualize, and what that is usually they'll tell you to do the visualization at the top of your head. And the reason for that is because of the neurons and the nucleus of the neurons. When you're seeing the white light, what's happening is you are activating the neurons in a specific purpose. You're activating on purpose your energy that you can focus, and it becomes, you can see that white light go down into your hands, which then you use your hands to create PSI energy. So you're actually creating a fluid, kind of a plasma energy that you may not be able to see physically, but you're creating an energy that you're going to use to draw with. And later on, I'll talk about a personal procedure you can do to cleanse your aura, put a protective system on your aura, get your system in good working order. So when you do a thing of where you get a container of water and put salt in it and then light it, what you're doing is you're using the neurons, using the PSI energy to charge up that water. And then that water, they have done tests on water that's been blessed, and the water crystals change totally. So, I mean, if they freeze the water crystals change. So there is some kind of physical action going on. And of course, we use sage because that, with lower energies, it's easy to kind of suffocate them out. They're not real high functioning. So noises, frequency, and smell will help push those out temporarily, usually in a space. So when I go into cleanse the house, I open up every cabinet, every closet, every door, and I start at the front door, going in a clockwise manner. I do a little spiritualist call that I do to get the assistance of my spirits that assist me, that help. Everyone has spirits that help them. And so I do that and start at the door, and I will go around first with the water in a spritzer that I have white lighted with my PSI energy. And I will go, spirits of ill will, spirits of ill intent, cannot, will not cross this line. Then I use my PSI energy along with that water, and I draw a basic line around the house as I go, spritzing. And I white light anything that's dark space. I go back to the front door. I do it 3 times. Spirits of ill will, spirits of ill intent, cannot, will not cross this line. Then I do the smoke, and I'll do that 3 times. And then when it's finished, then I'll do a little blessing for the goddess and gods. And I've created basically a sphere with a drawn line around it. And then you have to white light the inside of that space, because if you don't fill the space with some sort of energy, something else will fill it back up. So you have to fill it with white light, push the negative out, keep it out of the boundaries, and then the people in the houses sometimes are having a relationship with this energy, and they have to, I tell them, don't talk about it, don't think about it, for a week, just don't talk about it and let it die down, because when you talk it, then you're vibrating. It knows, the energies know when you talk about them, because when you talk their names or you talk about them, it's a certain vibration. So when you do that frequency, they go, they hear that frequency, feel that frequency, and they feel like you're calling them. So you kind of lay low for a little bit, let that die, let that energy change, and push it out. Then you have a sacred boundary. And the reason that quartz crystals work, of course, we used to use crystals in TV tubes and all that, because quartz holds a frequency. If you take a quartz crystal, cleanse it in the salt water, and charge it up with your energy, you can use that as a pointing tool. It's like a little laser. It has energy, it frequencies, it holds it, it expels. If you use it to send or receive, it will work that way. But you always need to cleanse them after you've done a cleansing, because they will pick up energy, because they do hold frequencies. And usually if I'm working in a house where there's people, children, people, then I tell them what to do. If the house is you have to look at the environment, if it's cluttered or dirty, because a lot of times if things are going bad, people get depressed, and so then the house becomes a representation of that energy. So you have to clean, you have to get your mind uncluttered, you have to get your environment uncluttered, and you can also use other things. You can take, since heavy smells are very effective on lower energies, you can get hot bowls of vinegar and put them in the center of the room for an hour. You can get cloves of garlic that you've cut up a little bit, put them in the windowsills, let the bad smells, the heavy smells be there for about an hour, go back in, take the vinegar, dump it down the toilet, take paper towels, don't touch the garlic because it absorbs negative energy. So you scoop up the garlic, throw it away, you throw up you do anything you can do. You can mop with water that has vinegar in it to help, anything that is a bad smell to you is a much more intense thing for a spirit, because everything is, they are a plasma, electromagnetic plasma that has everything, whatever, when they were alive, their spirit form has the same functions, an electrical system that's in the plasma, a plasma form. So, but everything is vivid. So anything that you see is vivid. They hear frequencies because they are a frequency. So it's more intense. So if you use something to make a loud noise, it does affect them, because that's what they are, is frequency. And any smells and things, you just think about it, they're not using physical organs to smell, but everything that they do smell is just so much, 100% more than what we do, because they don't have a filter. So you use all those tools at your beck and call to chase things off. And then after you do that, then you have a little sacred space, basically. You've got your place clean, you've got it, and you have to do it a few times to make sure that you've got that boundary done. And then usually that will take care of it, unless somebody is having more of a relationship with the spirit and calls it back in. Or if you don't have a boundary, you may cleanse it, but after it dissipates, after the energy dissipates from that, because it will, because you have to keep it up for a while, then they'll just come right back in if you don't have a boundary.
That's a good point, Mark. And Greg, this is a little bit what you were talking about before, is, you both touched on the fact that cleansing a place, you can do that and you can get that cleansed, but if the people living there are interacting and continue to interact with these entities of whatever level they are, whether that we won't even try to get into that. There's so many different entities levels, but with the ghosts, the spirits, or whatever entity, the problem is, and like you said, Greg, you have to do some spiritual counseling, and that's what you do as well, Mark, with the people, because if you don't, get the people on board and let them understand that this is something they have to let detach, because it will get attached to people. Entities get their favorite people, and sometimes the confusion comes in because some entities, even if they're negative, they're not necessarily negative to a particular person, but because they are a low-level energy, they will drain that person. It makes them sick. It makes the whole environment and the energy dark, and makes other people in the house, be affected by that physically, mentally, all sorts of things. So I think, Greg, is that kind of what you were talking about with your cleansings?
That's absolutely correct.
Mm-hmm. Now,
and when you're having metaphysical conversations, electronics do weird things.
Yes, they do. They really do. Let me ask you guys this. Greg, we'll start with you. Once you have, cleansed the space, and like you said, especially with a portal, now you might, for somebody who's watching this and they're not familiar with what is a portal, what is that, can you just touch briefly on what you're talking about when you say you can't close that portal, but you can keep it sort of pushed back, and maybe explain a little bit about that?
Right. I mean, it took about 3 trips to this place, 3 investigations, to realize that there was a portal, and I got video evidence for that. And the portal is opening up into another realm from the other side, that someone either did a seance or a Ouija board or something to that nature, and created a hole where the other side can come and go as it pleases. And when you do that, good, bad, and different comes in and out. So I can calm it down through prayer and the the stage and the holy water and all the other stuff. And like Mark's talking about boundaries. I mean, that's a big deal, and that's what we try to do. And that's what we. I mean, portals are something else because I didn't open it. I can't close it. I have to find somebody that either did it or someone who specializes in that. You know, an exorcism is the way to close a portal and stuff like that. So, yeah, that's where that's coming from.
Yeah, and Mark, you ran into a situation that you talk about in, I believe it was in Shades of Angels, where you went to a place and they were, I'll let you tell the story, but it was essentially, it was an open portal and you had that same issue that it wasn't yours to close. Can you talk about
that photo you're talking about, that bizarre photo? That was
the funeral.
Sin Schrader Hill took that photo, and you can very readily see the streaks of spiritual energy and entities that are circling around this Ouija board. But
it's just
this story, of course. Now it's a place in Tennessee. I can't even think. I think it's near Fayetteville, and it's a huge funeral home that used to be a funeral home. And they turned it into a haunted house attraction. Now, Sin Schrader, who is in a ghost group, some of their group helps do the haunted house attraction. So they called me in and I went, and I create my own spiritual communication devices that are very in-depth. They're very, I've spent months doing energy workings on them, making my own virus protection. Teal and Tui, I think, have been with me when I used one of my older devices. But there was a scientist involved, two scientists actually, and we went and they wanted me to do seancing to connect with the spirits, and I did. And but my device, it's very high energy frequency. It's like you have internet virus protection, I have my energy protection, and I have my device. Well, the scientists, all the men are scared of any of my devices. Women are fascinated and drawn to them. Men are scared out of their drawers. And so we're in there, and the scientist knows about that Ouija board. I didn't know about it. And he asked me about that Ouija board. And I used my skills. And I told him I knew exactly where it was, explained where up on the second floor in the right hand, where in the corner where closet where the Ouija board was. And because it was an open device. It was from the 30s. Still had its box, but it had been used and it was an open tool. And as part of their haunted attraction, they had all these Ouija boards and things laying around. And that one happened to be one that was an open ulcer, an open portal. So I told them, without knowing where it was, where it was. So the scientist gets up, they all run off, they go and get it and hide it another place. And then ask me, now tell me where it is now. And I said, well, it's behind that partition over there, I explained the room, and there was this partition. I said, you put it on the other side of the partition. And he just about crapped down his legs. I mean, it was just,
You knew that from your device or from intuiting that?
Both. I mean, because my device is, I'm using it as a tool. So it helps, I have connections into the Akashic Library with my tools. So I was just connecting in, and I was able to tell him I had not seen where they hid it, because I was in a place where I couldn't see all that, and there was people sitting with me. Sin Schrader was with me. And so the scientist hid it, and I told him where he hid it. So he about had a fit. So Sin and them took pictures of it, and when they took pictures of it, you could see the light coming out of it because it's an open portal. But I told them that because it wasn't mine and it was someone else's stuff, that someone else owns it. Without the permission of the person who owns it, you cannot close those things. And so it's still running, it's still open. But what a portal really is, in my opinion, when people talk about dimensional walls, the dimensional walls are electromagnetic membranes. Basically, they're bands that are created by the energy coming from the equator, the center of the earth, going towards the poles. And every time it pulses, it makes a band, and then that becomes a dimensional channel. And each channel has energy in it and whatever is in it from that year that it's kind of like a tree ring. It's like, each one is like a year almost. And each of those membranes holds information in between them. And the walls of the dimensional wall are really like a vibrating strings. So the walls, when they're pulled at certain times of the year, 2 times of the year, Beltane and Samhain, because of the gravitational pull, it stretches, and they say the veil gets thin. What happens is the veil pulls apart, and then when the energy releases, then it just goes back together. But what happens in a dimensional wall where it kind of gets an ulcer and has an open hole, that's a portal. It's just, you're going to get information from the other side of it, whatever it is. The ones closest to us usually just have like static and weird frequency, and in the older dimensional walls, then you get the ghost and the things that are more formed. And so you'll get all sorts of stuff. You just don't, it'll just pour through because it's an open wound.
Well, I want to just touch on too for a second for people that are wondering about how did that Ouija board, be open. Well, the thing is, you see it in movies, you hear it in stories, television. People get these devices, and now they even make them for children in pink and blue, so that at quite a young age you can get started on your adventure. I think it's a terrible idea, but they do have them. They have them blinged out. They have everything, Barbie pink, ready to go, age 5 and up or something.
And you have to buy them at a toy store.
Yes.
They are a communication device created by spiritualists for communicating with spirits. It's not a toy. It shouldn't be available in a toy store.
No, they shouldn't be available in a toy store, but they are. And so you have all ages of people with these boards. And of course, Tui writes about her experience in
that Girl Scout
her
thing.
I have a story where these witches, Judy and Michael Myers, told me that there was 2 little girls. They were friends of some of their coven up in Massachusetts, wherever. And these 2 little girls had gotten a Ouija board, and they wanted to talk to Jean Harlow and Marilyn Monroe. And they wanted, the one that wanted to talk to Jean Harlow, she wanted to be Jean Harlow, to come into her and make her like Jean Harlow, beautiful, talented, wealthy, known. And they were little girls. 11 years old or whatever. And so the little girl goes, I want to be like Jean Harlow. And she wanted to be beautiful like her. So she says, I want to be like Jean. She fell over in renal failure because Jean Harlow is dead. And the little girl started dying. And they called Michael and Judy to come, and they went into the hospital room and surrounded her and got that spirit separated from the child. And the thing is, it really works. You could communicate. You don't even need a Ouija board to communicate with spirits. But when you use a communication board, when you invite a spirit into your space, it's like, don't invite the vampire, you break down your protective system, and you're allowing that to come in and infiltrate into you. So they were able to save the little girl, but she was on her way to dying. And so it can be a very serious event to use a Ouija board. People can use them and use them correctly, and always say goodbye, hello.
That's what closes them out. But so many people get scared and they toss it in the closet or under the bed or wherever, and it's just open.
Yeah.
Now,
And
I wanted to butt in real quick because I thought Mark touched on something really important where he said it doesn't have to be a Ouija board to communicate.
No.
So I think sometimes people, they're like, oh, I would never use a Ouija board, but I'll take my digital recorder and then I'll stand in a room and go, hello, spirits, are you there? And engage in a conversation with something. And then not think about closing it out or what they've done. I think that's because it's not a Ouija board. You just don't realize you're still inviting. It's an invitation of, hey, communicate with me, bring it on one way or the other. So I thought that was a really good point.
No, it is. You just in conversation, you don't even have to have any sort of device. And you're right. You guys are right. You are, believe me, you're in contact and communication and things. You're sort of, your own energy source is a bit like a flashlight.
Yeah.
And so, especially when you're curious and you're asking, your flashlight's really bright. And so all of these entities, spirits that are around, they're just like, you want to talk? You want to know? Okay. And, they will come. So, that happens. Greg, I wanted to ask you, what are some of the things that you tell people to do when you're giving them spiritual counsel to, kind of live in a place that is in kind of a constant upkeep to, especially that one spot where they're always having to keep the spirits at bay? I mean, how do you tell them to deal with that?
I tell them that they have to take charge of their own home. I mean, honestly, they have to take charge of they have to stay positive. Go around and mow with negative attitudes and energy and everything else, because that's just going to perpetuate the whole problems that they got going on. So it's all about positivity and great attitude after you go in and try to cleanse a house and stuff like that, because it's their own energy that keeps bringing it back, So I just keep telling them, you got to stay positive, keep the prayers going, and remind them it's your house. It's not their house. If they're good, if it's family, if it's whoever, they're more than welcome to stay if that's who you want. But if it's not who they want, they got to take charge, and they got to do it themselves. They can do their own sage and then everything else. They can do that. They know how to do it, and but it's all about their own attitude and their own positive energy.
Yeah, I agree.
It's the negativity that and what y'all talking about on the Ouija board and stuff like that, I mean, when you're asking people, when you're sitting there with your own device and stuff, and you're asking, hey, who's here and stuff, you're not inviting something out of a hole to come out. You're already talking to somebody that's already there. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, it's
that's a point.
Well, when I do my communication devices, my own personal ones, because of the way I set up the energy fields, I keep everything at arm's length. I'm talking to it. It's not coming into my space. But a lot of people, when they open up a Ouija board or whatever, whatever they're doing, or even in ghost hunting, calling a spirit to them, if they don't have the protective system up, or if their system's down a little bit because they drink or they do drugs or they have emotional issues, and their system isn't as strong, then sometimes it's just like a virus. I mean, they just get infected, or it'll eat on them for a little while. It'll feed off whatever thermal heat you're putting out. And but when I deal with them, I keep them at a arm's length. They don't come into my space. And if I feel that something's trying to push that way, then I have certain setups to keep that from happening, to shut it down. But a lot of people don't know that when they're doing a board, they can't tell what they're talking to. And
that's exactly, Mark, I want to jump in and say that's one thing I want to sort of be the warner of people that you don't know who you're talking to. And let me tell you, from somebody who speaks to many different entities and different levels and different all sorts, you do not know. They will pretend to be anybody. You can think that they will do that to lure you in, to let you get your guard down so that they develop this relationship. And that is how, there's so many different stages of things, but it can get very, very dangerous and scary as it goes along. And people get these attachments, and they are interacting with them, and they're keeping them alive because they think that they're interacting with their dead relative.
Like a little kid or saying,
right. Oh yeah,
scary story. I would fall for that. I think that's why I find those stories really scary, where it's like, there was one with the Warrens. They were Ed and Lorraine Warren. They were on Coast to Coast AM years ago, and they talked about this people who had a horrible experience, but it started out with a Raggedy Ann doll. It would just, oh, how cute. And she would just change position. Like, you pose. And I do that too. My mom had given me, made me a Raggedy Ann doll. And while I was listening to this on the radio, I was unpacking and I put my Raggedy Ann doll up. Oh my gosh. It was, got me so jumpy by the end. But to think that it posed as a little kid, I could see myself falling for that,
A lot of people, because that's one of the things that dark energies will do the most, is they will pose as children. And because you automatically, even if your defense is, if you think they're up, when you see a child, or especially is the child crying, does a child need to be hugged? They're like, oh, I don't want to do anything because it's a child. I don't want to cleanse it. I don't want to do anything. You don't know what that is. They can appear and be and have you visually see them as anything they want. So that's just my cautionary tale to everybody. If there's any question, I would say don't engage with any of them, but you're going to anyway. And so that's why we write the books. That's why we all talk about this, is because you won't leave it alone. So it's to give you some sort of help and advice about that. So once people have cleansed their space, what do you guys advise, or what do you do to have this personal protection of yourself and keep things away, or keep it clear?
I'll pray before we go in, along with the homeowners or whoever's with us, and for the protection as we go in. And then as we wrap up, whether we cleanse or not, we do it again. We circle, hold hands, and we say a good, strong prayer for protection, and goes home with us and stuff like that. That's what I do.
What I do, and actually, there's been a big surge in people asking me for personal meditations to help reset their boundaries, reset their aura, because your aura is your CAT scan. It starts up here at the neurons, goes around, your energy that's around you, from functioning, from your spirit energy, from your health, everything that you've done and are doing. Your aura usually holds at least 76 hours worth of energy at one time. So people who are psychic can come up and look at your energy and tell you things that have been going on with you just because it's there.
Yeah.
And I teach people how to do the meditations where you reset your aura by, you do mental images. I tell them, you imagine you're on a beach, you're sitting on the beach listening to the ocean. You do your light at the top of the head, and see the light go down from your head to your hand. Draw a circle in a clockwise manner around you in the sand. Then you go back to that light, fill it up, let it flow down your body into the circle, fill it up until it's glowing like you're a sphere in a sphere of white light. You just drew a boundary around you that's a protective boundary. You white light it until you're the center of a sphere of light. So you've just cleansed your energy, you reset your boundaries, you reset your energy, it's clean. And then anytime that you want to you need extra protection, what you do is you imagine like a little radio dial in your head, and you can turn down the light. You dim it, you never turn it off. of the circle. But what you do is you reabsorb the energy that you see, from that you made it to a sphere. You reabsorb the energy, wrap it around you, reabsorb it. But you leave the circle intact around you. You can dim it down, and if you want to, it'll always be protected. But you don't want it running all the time because it'll wear you out. It'll wear out your energy. So when you want to use it, or you need extra protection, you can go 1, 2, 3, turn that light up, and then you have the protected circle. But it's your CAT scan. It's anything that ever so often, if you reset it, you're setting the boundary. Things can't just be in it. You're not just feeding derelict energies. You're not getting infections, and it's a real simple thing to do. And I always say, just circle is dismissed but never broken. You don't turn it off, you don't break it. But then when you come into other energy, you can CAT scan it and read it without taking the crap in with you. And but it's just a simple thing. But I've given it out to quite a few people because they're going, I'm too open.
Yeah.
And if you're damaged, then and we damage ourselves all the time. So every so often you need to cleanse it, because if you don't, there are people who are derelict psychics and feeders who'll come up to you and say, "Oh, I see this bad thing in your, you got to come to me and give me $300 to, in a bag at midnight, and I'll kill a chicken and I'll get rid of all this bad stuff." And they can tell. And spirits will do it too. Spirits who talk to people on the communication devices will tell them things about their life, what happened yesterday or whatever, because it's in your energy. They just read it. They just picked it up. And people will go, "They know me. They just read my mind. Oh my God." And they'll freak. And that's the purpose. And so you have to go, well, they picked up some energy that you're transmitting. So you need to cut that off so they can't do that.
I think people need to learn to be more, I think as man evolves, people will learn to be more responsible for their own energy, because people talk a lot about energy vampires, people who you are around who suck your energy. I don't think it's always a conscious thing. It's not like someone goes out the door going, "Oh, I'm just going to go down to the coffee shop and suck people's energy," but they just do. They're not aware of it. Yeah. And I think for me, working as a barista, having people come and you see them first thing in the morning, it was a crash course in people's energy, because every person comes up to the counter and you feel something from them. And one thing I noticed over time was people would either, as they approached me, I would feel it in my gut, and those were the people like, "Give me a latte," no, please, or thank you. And I'd feel like a twinge in my stomach, which, the solar, as I learned and read about chakras later, it was very enlightening, but I would feel like it twist. And then other people would come up and I'd feel it in my heart. And so I kind of did this game, and when I first started out, after a 4-hour shift, maybe I would just be wiped out. It was just hard to deal with. And I think, Mark's talking about dimming your energy. I learned some of that like unconsciously, but also I started this game where when people, a crabby lady approaching the counter, and I know how it is dealing with her, I would either find myself putting my hands over my stomach, or I would try to just, okay, I'm just going to deal with her from my heart and just move it up. But I think people are going to learn that more and more over the next decades and all. I think it's going to become more something that we all do. And maybe it'd be great if kids were learning this in school instead of, let's get a Ouija board at the toy store. Let's learn about how our energy, be responsible for the energy we put out in the world.
Yeah. And also you can always do like a Star Trek thing and go shields up, shields down.
Oh, I like that.
You know what? I actually have to go. The dogs are here. They need to go out. So I'm sorry about that. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us,
Cassie. Yeah. Bye.
Greg, let me ask you. Let me ask you, Greg, when you are going into some of these places and you're cleansing, and your equipment, I've been there with you when you're doing some of these investigations, and your equipment that you set up is very interesting, because some of it is a light system attached with it, and you can see as the spirits are coming closer and closer to you or moving about a space. It's quite fascinating. But is there anything that you have felt like that you touched something that was actually not just lower energy, but at something that was really truly evil?
Oh yes, absolutely have. Absolutely have. I've been oppressed, and I've been physically touched, scratched, the feeling of burning sensation, uh, punched in the gut, slapped in the head. Uh, I definitely have, and you can always walk into what my connection is. When I walk in, man, that room is heavy or more dark than usual, and yeah, and that's when the battle starts with me. That's when a spiritual battle is commencing, you know, and so I have to really put the armor of God upon me, and I don't freak out or anything like that, because I want to know what I'm up against. I want to know, am I up against a low level demon? Am I up against just a negative person from the past life or whatever? So absolutely.
Interesting. Well, does anybody have any last thoughts on the matter of protection or cleansing that you'd like to?
Well, I was going to bring up something with you.
Oh.
We're going to talk about corpse wood catch fly.
Oh, yeah.
This is something that even energy technicians sometimes have to go, oh.
Ooh.
I started writing this book, and it was about vile people who do vile things, and one of them is dead, but his energy is still bad. So I wrote this book, and every time I've sent it to Teal or we've worked with it, for about a month, every time we would try to fool with it, you tell them, Teal.
Oh gosh, Mark is writing a book called Corpsewood Catchfly, and Corpsewood is an actual place that exists, and people from all over the world come and visit it. And
what a name! He mentions it in Spirited Tales, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Corpsewood. Yeah, I thought so, because I was like, I got to look this up. That's nuts.
It's an international thing.
It's an international thing, and so people, it's the site of several grisly murders, and I'll let Mark talk about the history of it. But the book has, every time that we work on it and put it together, and we're just about finished with it, actually, thankfully. I cannot wait to be done with this book. It's phenomenal, though. It really is very interesting. But because Mark touched on using everything in energy and setting up boundaries, and there's protectors, and depending on what type of energy you work with, there's people who use energy in a dark way. There's people who use it in a way of light. But the fact is, you can create these energetic boundaries, and almost like guardians or guard dogs or things. And they had set up these Mark, like
fetches and boundaries.
And so these entities, when we were working on the book, they awoke these entities, and we started having problems only when the book, when we were working with the book, because it was almost like Mark said before, they know you're talking about them. Each energy has their own frequency, like a name, if you will. Even though we weren't calling their name, we were talking about their people. Yeah. What they used to protect and boundaries. And so they just came to see, like, oh, what's going on? What are you talking about? And because they were such low level entities, oh my gosh, electrical things went crazy. Our own physical health would be bothered, just because they were such a strong entity that they affected the actual energy of our own selves and our own spaces. Mark, I'll let you talk about that a little bit.
Well, and I hadn't, of course, I was doing 2 or 3 things at one time. So, and this book came about real quick, because the people that I'm talking about that are they were shock jock Satanists. And actually had bad encounters with them, because they wanted to kill me at one point, tried. And so it's been 30 years, but because I'm having to tell a story that hasn't been told in 35 years. It's like lancing a boil, basically. And so I wasn't thinking about that. I needed to do all this energy work. And before I'd send the stuff before I send it to Teal, I'd say, all right, get your energy going. We're going to do this before I throw the ball your way. Because, I mean, we are talking about I was writing about it. The lightning struck and took out my internet for 6 days. Every time we were doing something awful is happening, we both were just like, ah. And it was just because we were dealing with just really rotten energy. And so now we do energy work before we do anything. I've taken a break from it because it's a good book. And it will scare people because it is scary. And they were scary individuals. And they created thought forms and fetches that they used to send to hurt people. And all of that stuff is still out there. I mean, just because the owner is dead, he left it running. It's still out there. It's its own functioning. So, even as technicians, we have to learn how to deal with those things and ever so often. But
I mean, when Mark had we had this simultaneous thing, and we live, several states away from each other, but he had this lightning storm just take out all his power, and we had this crazy storm come up. Isn't it funny at the same time? And didn't take out the power anywhere else except my poor neighbors have no idea what happened to them. But it took out just our street. Everybody who's around me. It took us out, and at the same time, my daughter, it was late. She went to get something out of her car. She's like, oh God, it's storming. I forgot something, and there was all of a sudden this man in our driveway. We have a really long driveway, and there's 2 houses on the 3 acres, and she's in the back house. And so he was just there. He's very odd. She said, this just didn't seem right. What's this person doing out there in the middle of the night? And he said she couldn't quite understand everything, the way he was sort of half talking. But it was something like, oh, the storm and the power, or something. And she was like, okay. So she just took off and got in the house. And then, but the person was just gone. They were just not there anymore. And so I told Mark about it, and he goes, probably that wasn't even a real person. That was
because
form or something.
We were talking about a fetch, which was a very important part of the story. And that's, it was just them pushing the envelope, trying to give a little scare. And
it worked. Definitely. It was scary because that's the thing. These things can affect your life in such a real way. And I know, Greg, you see that a lot with people. It affects them in a real way, a real world, real life way. And that's why they call you to come and cleanse their houses and their spaces and their businesses. And Mark, you too. But it's really the real thing. And I just, part of the reason we do these interviews and talks is to let people know these are real things. And, while it's great to be curious, be protected. And I hope that you take some of these points that we've talked about today to make sure that, you don't have anything following you home.
And the more that you become built up and you're doing it, if you're a ghost hunter or anything, the more you do your procedures, that also makes you're like a light on the foggy street in the spiritual level.
That's true.
So the more you're in it and the better your system is, the more you're going to attract them sometimes when you're doing ghost hunting, because they're going to go, oh, somebody who's understanding something. And
tell us about your experiences with that, Greg.
Other times I get connected before. They're letting me know you're coming.
They're messing with your sound.
They're messing with your sound.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I said they let me know that I'm coming within the next couple of days.
Sure.
They always let me know. They let me know loud and clear that, hey, I know you're coming. Can't wait till you get there.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's spooky, really. That's really
I think it is important for people to pay attention to the dreams they have. Like if they know they're gonna, maybe they don't ever go ghost hunting, but they've been invited to go ghost hunting. Pay attention to the dreams you have a few days beforehand and maybe compare them with your friends, because you might be surprised. Like Teal, you had that incredible, it wasn't a dream. You were contacted by the Rogers Hotel, and I had a weird thing before my very first, official ghost hunt. And it's still really hard for me to describe, but it totally changed how I think about what it could be like to be on the other side. So
Is Linda still here?
no, she had to go.
Oh, she had to
No,
go
but we've
in and
got
close.
people with a couple of storm systems that have moved through, and so it's just us now.
Yeah, I
but
figured out.
they are so messing with you, Greg.
Yeah, and too, sometimes energy will be positive and give you positive warnings, because I live in a haunted house, let me tell you, and on purpose, I always find a haunted house to rent because they're so charming. And but we had something that that apparently was coming close, and so we started getting knockings on the door.
Ooh.
And 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and my partner started hearing it, and I was going, "Did you hear that?" And he says, "Yeah, while you were gone, it was doing that." And they were giving me a little heads up that something was passing that we needed to be extra aware of. And each night that it got further on down, like 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, that meant it was passing.
Good.
So
that's always good to see them go away.
Yeah,
well,
but when you're sitting there and it's tap, tap, tap,
Yeah, it's unnerving to say the least.
It's unnerving.
Well, Greg and Mark and Tui, thank you for being here. And the storms took Claudia and Linda away sooner. So we hope that it's not like the Wizard of Oz sort of storm, but just a little thing passing through. But thank you all for your time, and thank you for helping everyone here today. And I really appreciate it, and we will be back together soon. Thanks so much. Goodbye.
Thank you for hosting this.
Goodbye. Thank you for arranging this, Teal. This was wonderful. Great to see everyone. Bye.
Today.